Hi guys, this is Minna no Nihongo Lesson 1 Grammar Explanation. I highly recommend that you check out the Minna no Nihongo Lesson 1 vocabulary list before you proceed in watching this video so you can familiarize yourself with the words that we are going to use in this lesson. Without further ado, let's begin. それでは始めましょう. So for today's lesson, we will learn the following grammar points, and by the end of the lesson, you should be able to introduce yourself in Japanese. Our first grammar point is N1 wa N2 des. N1 is the subject or the topic of the sentence, followed by wa. This is the ha syllable, but since it is a particle, it is read as wa, and it is the topic marker of the sentence. Next, N2 describes N1, followed by the word desu or des. It is a Japanese copula which indicates that N2 is the predicate in the sentence. It describes N1. It also shows respect to the listener. So in Japanese, there's a formal way of talking and an informal way of talking. So one indicator of this is the word des. So des is the default, like in the middle word that shows politeness. If you're talking casually, des becomes da. So N1 wa N2 da. Or the most polite way of saying des is de gozaimasu. Anyway, for this pattern, let's stick to des. So remember this pattern because this is the basic structure or order in constructing Japanese sentences. N1 wa N2 des. Of course, N2 can be a verb, an adjective, or a noun. But remember this pattern because we would use this all throughout our lessons. So let's take a look at some examples. I am Rose. Of course, the first thing you would say aside from greeting is introducing yourself. So how do you introduce yourself? I am, and then your name. So if you checked out the vocabulary list for this lesson, you would know that I is watashi. Watashi. Rose in katakana is rose. Okay, so using the pattern above, let's make this into a full sentence. Watashi wa Rose desu. I am Rose. Very simple. Another example, let's say I am a Filipino. Again, I is watashi. A Filipino is Philippine Jin. So Philippine is Philippines. Jin is a suffix added to a country name to indicate that I am a national of a certain country. So Philippine Jin. So if we say the full sentence, it's Watashi wa Philippine Jin desu. I am a Filipino. Okay, third example is Mr. De La Cruz is a teacher. So how do we say Mr. De La Cruz in Japanese? De La Cruz-san. De La Cruz-san. A teacher. So we are talking about another person, so we are using the word sensei. If you are talking about yourself, it's kyoshi. Anyway, so let's make this a full sentence. Mr. De La Cruz is a teacher. De La Cruz-san wa sensei desu. I hope this is clear. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next one is the negative form of this. So the first sentence that we learned is the affirmative way or stating something is something. And the negative form of this is N1 wa N2 ja arimasen. So it basically means N1 is not N2. So it's the opposite of the first one that we've learned. Ja arimasen is the negative form of des. So for writing In formal situation, instead of saying ja arimasen, we use dewa arimasen. For example, I am not Maria. Using the pattern, we can say this in Japanese. Watashi wa Maria ja arimasen. So if this is a positive or affirmative statement, it's watashi wa Maria desu. But since this is a negative statement, we say watashi wa Maria ja arimasen. I am not Maria. And then you can follow this by a positive statement, which is watashi wa Rose desu. I'm not Maria, I am Rose. Another example, Maria is not Japanese. Maria wa Japanese is Nihonjin. And then followed by ja arimasen, is not. Maria wa Nihonjin ja arimasen. Maria is not Japanese. Another example, Miss Bonifacio is not a teacher. Bonifacio-san wa sensei ja arimasen. Bonifacio-san wa sensei ja arimasen. Okay, moving on to our third grammar point is how to make a question in Japanese. It's very easy. Like I said, remember the first pattern, N1 wa N2 des, because all you need to do is add ka, and that makes the sentence into a question. So, is N1 N2? Let's take a look at this example. Is Mr. De La Cruz a teacher? So, using the N1 wa N2 des pattern, let's write De La Cruz-san wa sensei des. This is the affirmative form of the sentence. If we want to make this a question, all we have to do is add ka at the end. The sentence now becomes, is Mr. De La Cruz a teacher? With the rising intonation. So how do you answer this question? So of course we answer this either by yes or no. Yes, Mr. De La Cruz is a teacher. Yes is hai. And then we just repeat our sentence above. De La Cruz-san wa sensei desu. So that's how we answer this question if it's a yes. If it's a no, the full sentence is no, Mr. De La Cruz is not a teacher. Iie, De La Cruz-san wa sensei ja arimasen. So using our grammar point number 2, we are stating that Mr. De La Cruz is not a teacher. Let's take a look at another example. Is that person Andrea? Okay, first let's use N1 wa N2 des pattern. That person is Andrea. Ano hito is that person. Ano hito wa Andrea desu. That person is Andrea, or you can say Andrea-san. Miss Andrea. Ano hito wa Andrea desu. And to make this into a question, we add ka. Is that person Andrea? Again with a rising intonation. So, yes, that person is Andrea. Hai, ano hito wa Andrea desu. If it's not, no, that person is not Andrea. Iie, ano hito wa Andrea ja arimasen. Okay, now, questions using interrogative word who. For example, we don't know the name and we want to ask, who is that person? So, we use, again, N1 wa N2 pattern. So, in this case, N1 is that person and N2 is who. So, ano hito wa? Who in Japanese is donata or dare. Donata is the polite way of saying who, and dare is the normal way of saying who. So you can use either donata or dare. On a daily conversation, it's okay to use dare. Ano hito wa donata desu ka? who is that person? So if we translate the sentence back into English, it literally goes like, that person is who? あの人はどなたですか? So for example, the answer is, that person is Mrs. De La Cruz. あの人はマリア・デラクルスさんです。Okay, moving on. Our next grammar is N1 mo N2 des. So this means N1 is also N2. Mo is also. So for example, our sentence is, James is an engineer. James wa engineer des. And we want to say that Anthony is also an engineer. So we say Anthony mo. So we replace wa with mo. Engineer des. Anthony mo engineer des. Anthony is also an engineer. Another example, if you want to say, I am also an engineer, you say watashi mo. So you don't have to repeat engineer des because it is already implied. Watashi mo. Me too. Our next grammar point is N1 no N2. So this grammar pattern has many uses, so we'll focus on this one, N2 of N1. So let's look at this example. Anthony is an IBM employee. So IBM is N1, employee is N2. Anthony wa, so again, N1 wa N2 des. But this time, N2 is N1 no N2. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, Anthony wa IBM no 社員です. Anthony is an IBM employee. Employee of IBM. Anthony is an employee of IBM. So Anthony wa IBM no 社員です. Another example is James is a student of Manila University. Our N1 is Manila University and our N2 is a student. So let's construct the sentence. James wa or James san wa Manila Daigaku, Manila University no 学生です. So James is a student of Manila University. James wa Manila Daigaku no 学生です. Lastly is the word san. So this is used to show respect. Basically, it is the equivalent of honorific titles such as Mr., Mrs., or Miss in English. So let's take a look at this example. This is Mr. Anthony Mabini. こちらは Anthony Mabini さんです. Okay, so this is an example of when you are introducing someone to another person. こちら is the polite way of saying これ or this. こちらは Anthony Mabini さんです or この人は this person is Mr. Anthony Mabini. Another example, that person is Miss Aguinaldo. あの人は Aguinaldo さんです. So whether it's female, male, again, Mr., Mrs., Miss, they're all the same. You only need one word for this in Japanese, and that is san. Another example is, how old are you, Mr. Mabini? Or how old are you? If you're talking to a person named Mr. Mabini, Mabini-san wa oikutsu or nansai. So this is how old in Japanese. Desu ka? So you know that you in Japanese is anata, but when you're not very close to someone you're talking to, you address them with their names. So in this case, even though you're talking directly to Mr. Mabini, you still call them by their name, like a third person. So Mabini-san wa nansai desu ka? So Mr. Mabini, how old are you? In my experience, you can attach san to first name or last name. If the other person introduced themselves to you using their last name, so of course you will address them using their last name. For example, Suzuki desu. I am Suzuki. So you call them Suzuki-san. But if they introduce themselves to you using their first name, for example, they feel comfortable with you and they want you to call them by their first name, Yuki, for example, it is still best to add san um, when you're talking to them, even though it's their first name. Unless you're very close, you can drop the san and just call them by the first name, Yuki, if you're really close. Otherwise, still use san, whether it's the first name or the last name. Okay, so how do you introduce yourself in Japanese? Okay, if you went over to our vocabulary list, you would encounter these words. Okay, self introduction. In Japanese, self introduction is jiko shokai. So, jiko is self, shokai is introduce. So, self introduction, jiko shokai. Usually, when you are new in a company or at a new workplace or at school, they would actually ask you to do a jiko shokai or to introduce yourself. So, how do you do this? The first word you will say is hajimemashite. So this means how do you do? But literally it's like for the first time. Hajimemashite. Usually you say this and then bow, or you can say this while bowing. So hajimemashite, and then tell them your name. Watashi wa, for example, Maria de la Cruz desu. Watashi wa Maria de la Cruz desu. I am Maria de la Cruz. Another way of saying des or watashi wa Maria de la Cruz des is instead of des, you use tomoshimasu. Tomoshimasu is much more polite way of introducing yourself. And then followed by dozo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. So this means pleased to meet you or please be nice to me. So this is the basic way of introducing yourself in Japanese. はじめまして。私はマリア・デラクルスです。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Okay, so you can make it very simple or you can add more. For example, you want to say, I am a Filipino. You want to tell them your nationality. 私はフィリピン人です。Or you can drop 私は and just say フィリピン人です。Because you started with 私はマリア・デラ・クルスです。フィリピン人です。So it's already implied that you're talking about yourself. So you can remove the subject, which is 私 or 私は. Another way of saying your nationality is, of course, telling them where you're from. In this case, フィリピンから来ました. I am from the Philippines. So again, you don't have to say watashi wa because it is already implied in the sentence. So, 私はマリア・デラ・クルスです。フィリピンから来ました. And you can also tell them what you do. If you're a student or if you work, you can tell them, in this example, I am a student. 大学生です. I am a student. So, again, let's go over our basic self-introduction. はじめまして。私はマリア・デラ・クルスです。フィリピン人です。私は大学生です。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Okay, let's do some simple conversation practice. The first is introducing yourself. So I am A and you will be B. So please fill in the necessary information and then see if you can introduce yourself in Japanese. Okay, let's begin. 自己紹介をお願いします。Okay, so I hope you were able to introduce yourself in Japanese. Another example is when you're in a casual setting and you meet someone new and they ask you for your name. Okay, try to fill in the B part and I will read the A part. Let's begin. 失礼ですが、お名前はマリアさんですか Okay, that's it for today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions regarding this lesson, please comment down below and I will try to answer your questions. See you in the next one. Bye!